Madhava prayers. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Giridhari Bhagavan ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maya ki jai. Jai Shri Bal Gopal ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Nitai ki jai. Gautamanandi Hari Hari. Thank you again for joining, everyone. So, as usual, before we start the Bhagavatam class, we'll read from Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. From the chapter Beyond the Lower East Side. Let me just... Can you see the screen, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Yeah, it's visible.
I think we stopped here yesterday, so I'll just continue from here. When the devotees gathered in his house, sitting stiffly on chairs in his living room, which was lined with bookcases filled not with books, but with two-dimensional designs depicting rows of books, he continued to flatter them. He praised Hayagriva's writings, and Hayagriva was obviously embarrassed and flattered. He praised everything about the devotees. He also spoke of how his dog had recently died and said, "The house seems empty without the little fellow." He was an unusual man, effeminate and full of flattery and praises. Prabhupada remained reserved after his first meeting with Mr. Price, though he was interested in getting the building if the proper arrangement could be made. Brahmananda continued to negotiate with Mr. Price, and soon, according to Mr. Price, the owners of the building would be expecting the devotees to give proof of their ability to meet the payments. On Prabhupada's direction, the devotees hired a lawyer to go over the contract. "This Mr. Price is causing us so much pain," Prabhupada said. "What is the difficulty?" He didn't see the necessity for Mr. Price at all. Why don't we purchase directly from the owners? Why all these agents? It's just the way it's done here, Ramananda said. Can I stop here?
Okay, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Let's continue from here. So, before we start the Srimad Bhagavatam class, as usual, we will sing the invocation prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamayyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति विश्रम्भ माधव स्वामिनिति नाम्ने गुरुं गौरं गिरिश्रेष्ठं यो विश्रम्भेन सेवते माधवं तुलसी रामकृष्ण कीर्तिकरं स्तुवे मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणम्। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेष्व भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। And as usual, we will thank Srila Prabhupada for his greatest contributions, his books from which we read and we get inspiration from every day. His translation of Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and so many more books. So thank you to Srila Prabhupada. And also thank you to all of you for joining us today for this morning's class. As usual, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm speaking now for my own purification and to develop my own Krishna consciousness. So thank you very much to the devotees for giving me this opportunity. So let's see where we are in Srimad Bhagavatam now. For a few weeks now, we've been discussing the story of Puranjana in the 4th canto. We are now in chapter 28. But just let's see the story so far. So we know that this story is an allegorical story that's being narrated or that's being said or told by Narada Muni to King Prachina Barhishat in order to deliver him. So King Prachina Barhishat comes in an exalted line of devotee kings, right from King Uttanapad, Dhruva Maharaj, Anga Maharaj, Prithu Maharaj, and from there he's a good king. He's pious and he is following all the Vedic rituals, but he's not exalted to the level of being a devotee like the other great kings in his lineage. And Narada Muni, seeing the potential for him to also become a great devotee, he comes there to deliver him and to give him some lessons. So in order to explain some principles to him of devotion, he narrates the story of King Puranjana. Now it's an allegorical story with Puranjana meaning the person or the soul that dwells within this body of 9 gates. And it is a story not only of King Puranjana or King Prachina Barhishat, it's also the story of all of us. We're all conditioned souls. We're all stuck in this material body of 9 gates. And so Narada Muni is telling him how this conditioned soul is so he is so bound up in the body, and it's so along with its intelligence. That's King Puranjana with his wife, the queen Puranjani. How they live a very a typical conventional life of being totally attached to each other, and through her he manifests so many sons and daughters, thousands of them, which actually represent his desires or the conditioned soul's desires. And obviously being so attached to the queen and to all these desires, At the time of death, Puranjana remembers only his queen. And so because of that, by the laws of karma, he has to take his birth again in this material world. And he gets the body of a woman who is now, but very fortunately for him, and as we have heard in the previous classes from other devotees, how merciful the Lord is, that completely causeless mercy, that this King Puranjana is reborn as Vaidarbhi, the daughter of a king. She's a princess, and by all good fortune, she is married to a very great king named Malayadhwaja. So Malayadhwaja is not only an exalted king in the sense he's not just a very powerful Kshatriya, but he's also a Rajarshi. He's a great devotee of the Lord. And so again, the allegorical comparison comes where basically the conditioned soul, by the causeless mercy of the Lord, gets the association of a pure devotee, gets the good fortune of getting a spiritual master. So this Vaidarbhi has got the spiritual master in the form of her husband, King Malayadhwaja, who leads her on the right path back to Godhead. So that's where we are in the story. We're talking about King Malayadhwaja, how he ruled the kingdom as a great Rajarshi, leading all his citizens on the path of devotion. And he also, with Vaidarbhi, they also produced children, 8 children to be precise, and all of them are symbols of devotion or devotional service. And they in turn produce so many more offspring, all of them products of devotion and devotional service. And so we saw in previous classes how the kingdom is filled with devotion because of the activities of King Malayadhwaja. Now we've come to the verse today. So let's just read today's verse. Is the screen visible? Can everyone read?
Yes, bro. Mataji, all right.
I'll read the verse. And so it says, Vibhajya tanayebhyakshmam rajarshirmalayadhvajaha ariradhayashu krishnam sajagama kulachalam. Vibhajya tanayebhyakshmam rajarshirmalayadhvajaha ariradhayashu krishnam sajagama kulachalam. Vibhajya tanayebhyakshmam rajarshirmalayadhvajaha ariradhayashu krishnam sajagama kulachalam. Would anyone like to try?
Yes,
Mataji, carry on.
please, Prabhuji, continue first you. Afterwards you.
Dandavad pranam, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Vivacha tanayeva shemam rajashi malayataja arirathishu krishnam shajagama kula chalam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Mataji.
Vibhajya tanebhyaksham Rajarshi Malayadhvaja Ariradhiyushu Krishna sa Jagam Kulachalam.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I was
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Vibhajya tanayebhyah kshamam rajarshirmalayadhvajaha ariradhaishu krishnam sajagam kulachalam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Mataji.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mataji.
Vibhajya tanayebhyah shamam rajarshirmalayadhvajaha ariradhaishu krishnam sajagama kulachalam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, please. Carry on. Yes, Mataji.
Vibhajyatanayebhyak shmam rajashirmalayat vajaha ariradhaishu krishnam sajagama kulach.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandavad
Yes,
pranam.
Krishna.
Dandavad pranam, Mataji. Yes, please.
Krishna.
Vibhajye tanyebhyah kshamam राजऋषिस्मल्यध्वजः हरिराधायिषु कृष्णं सा जगाम कुलाचलम. Thank you, Mataji. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji. Hare Krishna. Should we move on to the synonyms? Would anyone like to read the synonyms, please?
May I, Mataji?
Yes, please.
Vibhaje, having divided. Tanyebhe, among his sons. Chamam, the whole world. Raj Rishihi, the great saintly king. Malyadhvajaha, named Malyadhvaj. Arira Dhayai Shu, desiring to worship. Krishnam, Lord Krishna. Saha, he. Jagam, went. Kulachalam, unto Kulachal. Thank you, Mataji. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you very much. Hare Krishna. Would anyone like to read the translation, please?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, thank you, Mataji.
After this, the great saintly king Maladhwaja divided his entire kingdom among his sons. Then, in order to worship Lord Krishna with full attention, he went to a solitary place known as Kulachala. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you very
Thank
much.
you, Mataji.
Would anyone like to read the purport?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Purport by
Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Malayatyaja, the great king, was certainly a Mahabhagavata, topmost devotee. By executing devotional service, he begot many sons and disciples for propagating bhakti called Sravana Kirtana Vishnu. Actually, the entire world should be divided among such disciples. Everyone should be engaged in preaching the cult of Krishna consciousness. In other words, when disciples are grown up and are able to preach, the spiritual masters should retire and sit down in a solitary place to write and execute Niranjana Bhajana. This means sitting silently in a solitary place and executing devotional service. This Niranjan Bhajana, which is silent worship of the Supreme Lord, is not possible for a neophyte devotee. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur never advised a neophyte devotee to go to a solitary place to engage in devotional service. Indeed, he has written a song in this connection. Dushtamana tumi kishera vaishnava pratishtara tare niranjana ghare tava hari nam kevala koitava. My dear mind, what kind of devotee are you? Simply for cheap adoration, you sit in a solitary place and pretend to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But that is all cheating. Thus, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur advocated that every devotee, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, preach bhakti called Krishna consciousness all over the world. Only when one is mature can he sit in a solitary place and retire from preaching all over the world. Following this example, the devotee of International Society for Krishna Consciousness now renders service as preacher in various parts of the world. Now they can allow spiritual master to retire from active preaching work. In the last stage of the spiritual master's life, the devotee of the spiritual master should take preaching activities into their hands. In this way, the spiritual master can sit down in a solitary place and render Niranjana Bhajana. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Let's read the translation once more. It says, after this, the great saintly king Malayadhwaja divided his entire kingdom among his sons. Then, in order to worship Lord Krishna with full attention, he went to a solitary place known as Kulachala. We said we've come to the stage where King Malayadhwaja, he has finished all his responsibilities and he's now retiring. And he's going off into Kulachala, the forest, to undertake Nirjana Bhajan, or to worship Lord Krishna with full attention. So when I was reading this verse, I realized, one is, of course, there are so many perplexities in life. There's so many instructions we get, even in normal everyday life, what we should eat, Sometimes they say carbohydrates is good, sometimes protein is good, sometimes this is good, that is good. And sometimes, this kind of exercise is good, this kind of lifestyle is good, this kind of, going out in the sun is good, sometimes this is going out in the sun is bad. So there are so many instructions we get, and sometimes they're contradictory and they're confusing. They create a lot of perplexity. Likewise, when I read this verse also, initially I was quite perplexed, because this verse, there's a contrast, it seems, between King Puranjana and King Maledhwaja. So King Puranjana in his previous life, we've seen how he was so just a typical conditioned soul. He was so attached to material activities and to material life and to people. And that attachment was his downfall. And it seemed like Narada Muni is instructing us through the story of Puranjana that Puranjana is everything that we should not be. That we should try and not be Puranjana. We should not be so attached, because then at the time of death, we'll be inflicted with so much of pain and fear, and we'll be again cast into another material body. So Puranjana is not a role model. On the other hand, it seemed that King Narada Muni is telling us, showing us that King Maledhwaja is a role model, that he is the perfect person, a saintly person executing his material duties as well as focusing on his spiritual life. So he seems to, it's looked like Narada Muni is recommending the lifestyle or the life trajectory of King Maledhwaja. But then when I read the purport by Srila Prabhupada, it seemed like Srila Prabhupada is actually discouraging me, or discouraging us from following the path of King Maledhwaja. It seemed that he's not recommending that for us. So it was a bit perplexing for me, a bit confusing. And it reminded me of Arjuna's bewilderment. So Arjuna also, we know, we're very familiar with the story of Mahabharata, where at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is bewildered. He doesn't know what he should do. He's having a total breakdown, a panic attack on the battlefield. He's completely confused. Should I fight with my relatives or should I not? My Kshatriya duty tells me I should fight, but my duty as a person of the Kuru family tells me I should not. And then, because he's a devotee, he knows what to do. When we don't know what to do, we should know what to do, which is he turns to Lord Krishna for advice, for instruction, and he surrenders to Lord Krishna. Then again, Lord Krishna begins giving him his instructions in the Bhagavad Gita. After chapter 2, again, we see Arjuna. He's perplexed. He's bewildered. He's saying, Arjuna uvacha jayasi chet karmanaste matta buddhir janardana tatkim karmani ghore ma miyo jayasi keshava. Arjuna said, "Oh Janardana, oh Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work?" So Krishna has told him all about, in summary, all about Karma Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, and he's told him about his Swadharma and his Sanatan Dharma. And then he said how a person in Buddhi Yoga, whose transcendence is merged in Krishna, who's completely Krishna conscious, what kind of a person he is. And that's how chapter 2 kind of concludes. The beginning of chapter 3, Arjuna's perplexed. Oh, you're telling me Buddhi Yoga is so good that I should engage my entire consciousness in Krishna, in the Lord. Then why are you asking me to fight? He's confused. And then again, Lord Krishna explains to him the process of Karma Yoga, the process of renouncing while working. Again, a couple of chapters, we see Arjuna is again perplexed. Again, he's bewildered. Oh, these instructions seem equivocal. They don't seem clear. What should I do? Arjuna said, "Oh Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work. And then again, you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?" So he's confused. You're giving me different instructions. You're shooting different instructions at me, but I'm confused. What should I do? Yeah. And then the course of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains these different yoga processes in great detail, culminating in Bhakti Yoga, in devotion, process of devotional service. And we see that Arjuna is convinced. He says, He says, Nashta moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan mayachita. Then he says, Karishye vachanam tava. I will do as you say. And for Arjuna, what Krishna explained all these different yogas, for that it culminated in him saying, okay, I will fight. And then he fights the war of Kurukshetra, as we know. That was the instruction to him. Just contrast that to the same knowledge given by Lord Krishna to another great devotee. We have Uddhava in the 11th canto. And we know Uddhava is a great devotee of the Lord. Not only, he's a family member, he's a cousin, he's a dear friend of Krishna, and he's been with Krishna all his life. And towards the end of Bhagavatam, canto 11, Lord Krishna is preparing to return back to the spiritual world. At that time, Uddhava cannot tolerate separation. He's coming and telling Lord Krishna that, please take me back with you. I cannot bear to be separate from you over here. Don't leave me behind. And then Krishna goes on to explain more or less the same things that he's told Arjuna, all the processes of yoga, again culminating in Bhakti Yoga. But his instruction to Uddhava is different. He says, Uddhava, you have to renounce and you have to go to Badrikashrama and perfect your Krishna consciousness before you can return back to the spiritual world. And again, we see that the knowledge is the same, but the instruction to do two different people is totally opposite. Arjuna wanted to renounce, but Krishna convinced him to fight. And Uddhava, he didn't have an issue, but he wasn't really wanting to, not seeking to go to renounce and meditate in Badrikashram. But that was the instruction to him by the Lord. So these were just some perplexities and, some, how different instructions are to be understood. Now, in this verse, we see that King Maladhwaja is going to do Nirjana Bhajan. Nirjana Bhajan, as Prabhupada explains, it's solitude. It's worship in solitude. So just by yourself, in a solitary place, in a secluded place, just quietly doing your bhajan. That is Nirjana Bhajan. And we see that not everyone is suited to do Nirjana Bhajan. There's an eligibility criteria. First, let's see some of the qualities required of a person who wants to do Nirjana Bhajan. So I was looking at chapter 2. There is a famous Stita Prajna verses which comes towards the end of the Buddhi Yoga section of chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna is asking Krishna. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk?" He's asking, what are the symptoms of a totally Krishna conscious person? And we'll see the next few verses how Krishna explains what are the characteristics of such a person. He says, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Prajahati Yada Kaman, Sarvan Partha Manogatan, Atman Evatmana Tushtha, Sita Prajna Stadochate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So he's referring here to the senses and to the mind. He says when a person doesn't have any desire for gratifying his senses, when his mind is peaceful and calm, when he's satisfied to be with himself alone, then he is qualified. Let's look at the next verse. Just read the translation. It says, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Again, a person who is not disturbed, who's calm, who's peaceful and steady, and who doesn't have any attachment to anything material, is free from fear and anger. Such a person is qualified. Let's look at a couple more verses on this section. It says, in the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. And then One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as a tortoise draws its limbs within its shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So these are some of the qualifications for somebody who would like to practice Nirjana Bhajan, who is completely fixed in Krishna consciousness. He is eligible to practice solitary bhajan. Let's look at some other verses from the Bhagavad Gita, also giving us some pointers as to what would make a person eligible or not eligible. In chapter 5, let's look at this verse. It says, Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkham aptum ayogataha yoga yukto munirbrahma na chirenadi gacchati. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So he's talking about renouncing, but not being fully Krishna conscious. So if you are renouncing, but you're not fully Krishna conscious, it won't make you happy. You've not achieved the goal. Similarly, in chapter 6, we see another pointer. It says, Aru rukshor muner yogam, karma karanam uchyate, yoga rudhasya tasyaiva, shamha karanam uchyate. For one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. So the process is obviously very different for a neophyte and for a yoga rudha, for somebody who is advanced. Person who is neophyte, he has to work. He has to engage all his faculties through work in the service of the Lord. And for one who's advanced, he is eligible to give up his work and focus solely on bhajan, in solitude. Similarly, later in the same chapter, in chapter 6, we see Arjuna said, "O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady." So this is after Krishna has spoken chapter 6, which is Dhyana Yoga, talking all about meditation, how the yogi must sit in a secluded place. He must sit on deerskin, on a seat which is neither too high nor too low. He must control his mind and senses, and he must focus his eyes on the tip of his nose and give up all other activities. And after hearing the whole narration that Krishna has said about all the different steps involved in this kind of Ashtanga yoga process, Arjuna says, "Oh, this is impractical. It's not endurable. I cannot do this. It is too difficult because the mind is restless and unsteady." So again, we see different even psychophysical characteristics for people. Not everyone is suited for sitting and meditating in a quiet place, doing yoga quietly. Depends on each person's psychophysical nature as well. Then we come back to the pages of Bhagavatam. We see examples. We see examples of great devotees, exalted devotees, who followed the same process of retiring in a timely manner, finishing all their material duties as kings, and going into the forest, only to find that they are not able to, that they have maybe a fall down. We can't call it a fall down. It's a temporary fall down. Krishna is doing that to teach us some valuable lessons. But we've got Bharata Maharaj, for example, in Canto 5, where, again, like King Maladhvija in the story, he is handing over his kingdom to his descendants and is retiring into the forest. And there he becomes attached to a deer. Becomes attached. He was in the highest stage. He was like on the Bhava stage, it is said, just one level less than the stage of Prema or love of Godhead. And he gets attached to a deer and has to take the body of a deer in his next life. Similarly, there's in Canto 8, we have King Indradyumna, who again has gone into the forest to do some silent Nirjana Bhajan. And there he is, he's following a vrata, a mauna vrata, or vow of silence. And sage Agastya, he visits the ashram and not being received properly by the king because of his vow. Agastya Rishi gets very angry and curses him to become an elephant. So he becomes Gajendra in his next life. So these are also the pitfalls and dangers of even great devotees. So forget, even if you're not, we don't have the psychophysical nature or whatever, that is one. Even those that have the psychophysical nature, who are Siddha-prajnas, even they, at some level, when they go and try to do Nirjana Bhajan on their own, there is a lot of dangers in that process. We see in chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita again, that Vishayavani vartante niraharasya dehinaha raso varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But seizing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So, if somebody is forcefully trying to renounce the world, trying to forcefully control his senses, still within him that desire or the taste for sense object is there, and given a suitable opportunity, it will come out. But if you experience a higher taste, which is the taste of Krishna consciousness, then you can actually control your senses. Now, there are also, besides all these, these disqualifications, besides all these, things that can be pitfalls for us to do Nirjana Bhajan, which is making us unsuitable for it. There are other disqualifications of this age. As we know, we are in the age of Kali, which is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. Where is the opportunity to practice, in solitude entirely, your retirement? It's not possible. There are no forests to begin with. Even if there are forests, you're not allowed to go and live there. Even if you are allowed to live there, it is not safe for you to live there. Safety and security are issues. Then your provisions, like you'll not find food and shelter as you could in the previous ages in the forest. And even if you remain at home, if you stay just by yourself, it's not that you can live without interaction with the world. For your maintenance of your body, you have to interact with the world. You have to look after yourselves till the end of life. So it's not possible, basically, in this day and age for anyone to retire and to practice Nirjana Bhajan. Then we also come across, we hear about this, another kind of renunciation, which is Yukta Vairagya. We hear from Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and which is also referred to in Madhya Leela and Chaitanya Charitamrita. Let's just read this verse. It says, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yathartham Upayunjataha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate. Prapanchikata Kataya Buddhya Hari Sambandhi Vastunaha Mumukshubhi Parityago Vairagyam Phalgu Katyate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness, above attachment. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of his relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. So in this instruction, it seems like Rupa Goswami is instructing us that we don't falsely renounce things that can be actually used in Krishna's service. Similarly, we don't falsely renounce ourselves and commit ourselves to just solitary bhajan when our body and our abilities can be used in Krishna's service. So we have to engage with the world. We cannot entirely disconnect. Now let's look at our, that is pages of scripture. Now let's look at our own, what we see in our Guru Parampara. We have all these great personalities in our Parampara. Let's start with Bhakti Vinod Thakur. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur led a very long and fruitful life, a very, very successful life, both materially and spiritually. He was a magistrate in the British government in India. He was one of the magistrates in that area of East Bengal. And he was very, very successful in his job as a magistrate. But he was also, he also had a family, a big family. He was a big family man. He had 10 children and he was running his household also very smoothly. But despite all that, he also had time to devote himself to the Lord's service. He has written so many books and he's written so many songs as well, Vaishnava bhajans. And all through his life, he's contributed in so many ways to Krishna consciousness. But he, only towards the end of his life, very end of his life, only the last 5 or 6 years, I think he retired to do solitary Nirjana Bhajan. We come next to Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. He was completely different. He retired at the age of 29. He lost his wife, and that's when he went off to Vrindavan. And for nearly 30 years, he lived in Vrindavan, in all the forests of Vrindavan, the 12 forests of Vrindavan. He would live there. And he lived the life of a renunciate, basically. He was not attached to anything, led a very austere life. And every day he would commit himself to chanting 200,000 names of Krishna every single day. And then after spending 30 years there, on the instruction of his guru, he returned back to Mayapur, Navadvip. And there again, he continued his Nirjana Bhajan. And it is said that he would not like to mingle with any worldly minded person. He would not like to meet or speak with any worldly minded person. He would not even go to cities, like he would not go to Calcutta, even though it was near. He would never want to go there because he wanted to be by himself. He exemplified that being in solitude, doing Nirjana Bhajan. He was qualified to do it and he did it. He had only one disciple, and that too not of his own choice, but Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was so insistent, so keen that he should become a disciple of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, that finally Gaur Kishore Das Babaji agreed to it and he initiated him. But otherwise, he was completely doing his bhajan in solitude, not interacting with any materially minded person. Then his disciple Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, we see he's quoted even in this, the purport of this verse, we see that he's saying, he never encouraged anyone to be, any neophyte devotees, you're not qualified to do Nirjana Bhajan. So he would, but he himself, if you see how he began, before he went on to active preaching, he spent nearly 10 years of his life in Nirjana Bhajan, in solitude, in seclusion, just chanting the names of the Lord, just doing Harinam. He had a certain number of rounds, a certain number of names he had to chant. He had decided himself, and he did it. I think it took him 10 years to do it. And for that time, he remained in solitude and lived very austerely and did this Nirjana Bhajan. But later on, he came out into the world and he was called the Lion Guru or the Lion Preacher. He would reach out, and almost all over India, he spread the cult of Krishna consciousness, and he established the Gaudiya Math, and he did so many other activities just in the world, in this material world. And then we come to his disciple, Srila Prabhupada. Now, Srila Prabhupada, in this verse, in the purport, he's expressing, or he's actually appealing to his disciples that, at the end of my life, I want to retire. He's expressing that, and he's saying, you should take over the managerial affairs of this International Society for Krishna Consciousness. You should take over, and I should be allowed to retire. That is his ardent wish. But if you see, this is Canto 4. This is Canto 4, and we see he goes on to continue his active preaching nearly till the very end of his life. He is translating books very actively, reaching out, traveling, nearly till the very end. I don't think he, the very, very end, I think he retired to Vrindavan. Last few months, perhaps, last year, perhaps. But otherwise, all the time he was actively preaching, and all he would do was he would get Nirjana Bhajan in his translation work and his personal chanting, which he would do middle of the night, early in the morning, when nobody was there. But other than that, the rest of his day was spent in active preaching. He never retired in that sense. And we look at our contemporary gurus who came after him, all the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. We see so many of them. We see Jayapataka Maharaj, he had a stroke about 10 years back, and he has so many health issues, but he is still actively preaching, and he's still actively on the ground, still interacting with the world, interacting with people, and spreading Krishna consciousness very actively. And so many other disciples we see of Srila Prabhupada who have spent their entire life in Krishna consciousness up to the very end. Like they were actually, till the very end, they were actively preaching and interacting with the world. They were never going to solitary bhajan at any point. When we read about these contemporary gurus, I was listening to different classes by other devotees also on this same verse. And some of them, they were probably very young devotees at the time of Srila Prabhupada. They were very young, in their teens and early 20s perhaps. And there was one speaker, one devotee, who spoke about how in Australia, they were so driven to provide funds for the Mayapur project, that they would do all kinds of very interesting and very adventurous life in not only book distribution, but they would try and sell anything that could give them a profit. They would buy things cheap and sell at a profit, and all that money would get pumped into the Mayapur project. And that was their way of giving the spiritual master some time for his own Nirjana Bhajan, knowing that all these things were being taken care of by others. And it's very interesting. If you can, you should listen to that class. It's so interesting what all they did, what all adventures they had in raising funds for these different projects of Srila Prabhupada. So there are many devotees whom we don't even hear about, but they have also given their lives, and up to the very end, they have actively contributed to spreading this movement. So for me, when I read this verse, I was just contemplating it, and I had some learnings. So one is that yes, while we cannot be like King Malayadhwaja, definitely that kind of Sthita Prajna, that kind of perfect devotional service, that kind of perfect Krishna consciousness, I don't have. So I cannot do that. But at the same time, I cannot be like Puranjana also. I cannot remain like King Puranjana, so attached and completely involved only in material activities. So there has to be a development of detachment over time. How do we detach? So there's a couple of things that I heard from Keshav Maharaj's classes. One is in anything, any relationship you have with anyone in this world or anything in this world, your home, your possessions, your family, all of them, if we want to slowly detach ourselves, we have to, how we view them and what is our role in their life and what is the goal of that relationship. If we view them as resources that the Lord has provided kindly for my spiritual development, if I look at them as individually, they belong to Krishna, and so my role in their life is also to help them progress in their Krishna consciousness. And the goal of us is basically to develop our relationship only with the view of serving Lord, the Supreme Lord. Then that will help us develop detachment. And the other thing is the investment of hopes for happiness. So let me not look at anything in this world. Let me not invest my hope for happiness from these material things and these material relationships. My investment of hopes for happiness should only be from my relationship with Krishna and my service to him. That will help me become a bit more detached. The other thing was Nirjana Bhajan. Just like all these devotees, everyone, they are not able to set aside a total several years of their life to Nirjana Bhajan. We are not qualified, but at least every day, I should spend little time in Nirjana Bhajan. And it should be, we are able to manage that. Most of us, we are able to spend a couple of hours in chanting, because we have to chant 16 rounds a day if we are initiated. And we spend little time reading Srila Prabhupada's books. So that is our little daily quota of Nirjana Bhajan. But then I was just thinking, a thought just came to me a few days back that how Nirjan actually is my bhajan. Nirjan means without anything, anyone. When I'm doing my bhajan, I'm solely only serving, only thinking of Lord Krishna and serving him. But when I'm chanting, so many memories from the past, people from the past, they intervene in my thoughts. And so that is an area that I definitely need to work on to make my bhajan actually Nirjan. And then another learning I had was seva. So in this verse, especially in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is telling us how we need to serve. So the service is a very interesting thing. I thought it's a very magical thing. There are two aspects to seva. There are actually multiple aspects to seva, but two especially that are relevant to this verse. One is that when we serve, then we are actually, it's like many hands make light work. There's so much of service to be done in preaching Krishna consciousness. So much of service opportunities, so much of work is there. And if we take on some of the load, if we take on some seva, then obviously we are lightening the load on others. And then they have time for their own Nirjana Bhajan. So we are, it's basically sharing the load, sharing seva with everyone, helping each other in our respective paths. And also, the other aspect is that when we do nirjana, when we do seva, when we do service, then basically it helps us develop a connection or love for Krishna. So it's usually people think that when we love somebody, then we serve them. But actually, from experience and from what we see, it's not that way. It's actually the other way, where when we serve somebody or something, then we develop attachment and love for them. So if we want to love Krishna, then we have to engage in service. And service opportunities is unlimited, just like Krishna is unlimited. Service opportunity also is unlimited. And so we engage in this. And similarly, the other thing about seva is that, we all have some seva. If we don't have, we can take on some seva. So the quantity of seva, how much we can do, we try and do as much as we can. And we try, if we can't put in more time in doing seva, then at least we try to improve the quality of it or the intensity of it. If possible, we take on some more responsibility. All of this will, help us and help preaching Krishna consciousness. It will help. Like Mahaprabhu says that he's wanting to distribute the fruits of love of Godhead, but he cannot do it alone. And all the acharyas and gurus in our line, they're all helping him distribute the love of Godhead to all the conditioned souls. So when we do a little bit of seva, then we are helping them in their service to Sri Mahaprabhu. So with that, I'd like to end today's class. If anyone has anything to share.
Dandot Pranam.
Dandot Pranam, Prabhu. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Nice explanation and clarification of the text, how it Niranjan Bhajan stages and how it comes through your discussion and representation from various verses from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Yes, in everyone's life, Niranjan Bhajan stages are there. Now to understand what intensity or what stages is all depends on me, all on us. Because Niranjan Bhajan in a solitary condition. That means you devote some time and you devote that particular time for the Lord activities. It can be a Shiva, it can be reading, chanting, whatever. Srila Prabhupada has given every facility to come to the stage in a very simple way what is Niranjan Bhajan. But that is not all in our life. We have to maintain the life as well as, because in this age, we have to balance it. You have given one picture how, the whole, rock is balanced with the two loads.
Yes.
It is very, very important. You cannot go out of balance. So when you come to the balance, then you become a successful person and you can steadily go up to your devotion in a nice way. So we see the example and make ourselves ready so that in one day, and at least at the later stage of our life, we can make some effort to make Niranjan Bhajan. And that is the focus of this text. And you have explained so nicely, so examples from Bhagavad Gita. It clarifies how to do it and what is the importance. It is everybody's devotees in the line of devotees who are in the line of ISKCON should try and follow the steps that will help us to keep in track with Niranjan Bhajan status of life. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandot Pranam. Thank you very much.
Dandot Pranam.
Very nice class, and particularly bringing out the essence of this verse from different angles. Firstly, you have started with about the confusion what have normally in this material world, what we need to do, because it is modern. It's a place of duality, so we are confused. What is our duty? Because in duality, nothing is permanent as it is the material world. So what is true today, seems to be true today, and is not true the next moment, because that is the nature of the material world. And that's why Prabhupada has told we should not rely on the material knowledge in some sets. We should be always guided by spiritual knowledge, because as you have told what is to be eaten, and sometimes you have told food, that is changing every moment. Some doctors are telling one thing and it's been
Yeah.
discarded the next day. And some other day someone comes with a more speculation. But if you go to the verse of Bhagavad Gita, what is told about a food, that is true for all the time to come.
Yes.
It remains in the beginning, it remains now, and it will remain in the future as well.
Yes,
So
yes.
that is the first thing, the guiding light, or the what you can say, the guiding light for our life is Krishna consciousness. When we are guided by that, our confusion goes. Of course, for that we have to take shelter of our gurus, and there is a proper process of that. And when we achieve it, you have very nicely explained in verse 254 to 258, where what is the Sita Pokashoka Samadhistasha Keshava. He's asking, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna, and he has replied, what are the qualities? So in 266, it states that unless one has got a transcendental knowledge, he cannot have a steady mind. And without a steady mind, one cannot have, without steady intelligence, one cannot have peace. And without peace, how can we have happiness? So we are all looking for happiness, but happiness will come when we realize it, that when we are not connected to the God, we cannot have been peace. That is the ultimate things. And you have nicely told about Prabhupada's disciples who have made this point to spread to the whole of the world Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message, that every towns and village it should go, and how his disciples are doing that, and our responsibility to take part in it. And we should be careful that we do not miss that very important aspect of Prabhupada, that it should be preached, and preaching is the essence. Ultimately, whatever we have learned, whatever utilities we have, we must utilize. Whatever facilities we have, we must utilize it for the service of the whole humanity, and only then the success of the Prabhupada's movement will come. So we should do that. They're all, and in a balanced way, so that we can do it, we remain in our sadhana, and we can preach to others. So it is a balanced thing. When we do that, only then it will be successful. And thank you very much, Mataji, for bringing all this point.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you once again for a nice
Thanks so
class.
much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. If there's no other comments, should we end today's class?
One last comment.
Yes, Mataji, it appears there is no other person to make.
Mancha kalpatarivas.
Vaishnavibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah.
Antaputi Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Ki jai.
Jai.
Shila
Jai.
Prabhupada
Ki
Bad ki jai.
Jai.
Hari Hari Bol.
all
Yeah.
glories.
Please to
Assembled
assemble.
devotees.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.